Welcome to Martha Family Secret Stories. My phone buzzed on my desk, and I remember the exact second I picked it up because my whole world just stopped. You're not worthy of coming to my engagement party. I read it 3 times. 4 times. 5. Each time hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. But they didn't. They just sat there on the screen, cold and sharp, like a knife someone had left in my chest and walked away from. My name is Maya Collins. I'm 28 years old, a cultural event planner based in Memphis, Tennessee, and I pour every single piece of myself into every project I touch. That's just who I am. That's who I've always been. And for the past 3 months, every ounce of that passion, that energy, that love, had gone into planning my brother's engagement party. My brother. The person I grew up with. The person I used to sneak cereal with at midnight when we were kids. The person I called first when anything good or bad happened in my life. And now he was telling me I wasn't worthy. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. I want you to understand what those 3 months looked like, because this wasn't just me sending a few emails and calling it a day. Oh no. I had spent late nights, so many late nights, sitting at my kitchen table with fabric swatches and mood boards and spreadsheets open on 3 different tabs. I had driven across Memphis scouting venues until I found the one. A gorgeous rooftop at a boutique downtown hotel with a skyline view that would take your breath away. I had negotiated personally with our caterer, a wonderful woman named Renee Thomas, known all over the city for her southern spreads that make grown men cry happy tears. I had worked with a decorator named Marcus Webb to design custom floral arches, hand-painted name cards, fairy lights and mason jars, because we are southern people and we have southern roots and I wanted that love in every corner of that room. I did all of this for free. Because he's my brother. Because family is supposed to mean something. I set my phone down on my desk. I picked it back up. I set it down again. My hands were shaking, not in a rage, more like the way your body shakes when it doesn't know how to process something your mind hasn't fully accepted yet. I thought about calling him. But something told me to call my mom first. Maybe she'd make sense of it. Maybe she'd help me understand what was happening to my family. So I called her. Mom, did you know about what Daniel sent me? There was a pause. That pause told me everything before she even opened her mouth. Sweetheart, she finally said, her voice gentle in the way that felt less like comfort and more like a warning. It's his big day. He's under so much stress. Let's not make a fuss. Let's not make a fuss. I almost dropped the phone. I almost laughed. Because what else do you do when the woman who raised you tells you that being excluded by your own brother is something you should just quietly accept? I hung up. Not in anger, just in shock. The kind of shock that wraps itself around your throat and makes it hard to speak anyway. Then I called Daniel. His voice came through clipped and casual, like he was answering a call from his phone company, not from his sister, the one who had sacrificed her nights and her weekends and her own money for his celebration. Look, Maya, my fiancée Claire and her friends want a certain vibe, he said. You just don't really fit it. It's not personal. It's not personal. I pressed my lips together so hard they went white. 3 months. 3 months of vendor contracts with my name on them. 3 months of tasting menus and lighting tests and seating arrangements. 3 months of choosing him over and over again, every single night when I could have been sleeping or living my own life. Not personal. I kept my voice steady when I answered. I'm your sister, Daniel. I have been killing myself for your party. And you're telling me I don't belong there. He sighed. Gina, just drop it. It's my call. And the line went quiet. I sat in my Memphis office surrounded by all the evidence of my love for him. Contracts. Invoices. Fabric samples. A folder full of venue photos I had taken myself. And I cried. Not loudly. Just quietly. The way you cry when something breaks inside you that you can't show anyone yet. But through the tears, something else was happening. Something small and fierce was waking up somewhere deep in my chest. And it wasn't done yet. Stay with me. I thought I had cried it out. I really did. I gave myself one evening to fall apart, one night of letting the hurt wash over me, and then I got up the next morning, made my coffee, opened my laptop, and told myself I was a professional. I could hold it together. And then my phone lit up with an Instagram notification. It was my cousin Vanessa Reed, tagged at a bar downtown called the Velvet Room, and the photo was all neon lights and wide grins and raised glasses. My brother Daniel front and center, beaming. His fiancée Claire on his arm, laughing. A whole crowd of people, celebrating, toasting, making memories together. The caption read, "Best pre-engagement bash ever. Love you, Claire and Daniel." I scrolled through the story. Clip after clip of them dancing, clinking glasses, planning the wedding I had built from scratch. And not one mention of me. Not a tag, not a text beforehand, not even a "we missed you Maya" thrown in for show. I messaged Vanessa. Just a simple, "Hey, saw the post. Was I supposed to be there?" Her reply came back fast. "Oh, Maya. It was just a small thing. Didn't think you'd care. Didn't think I'd care." I put the phone face down on my desk and I just sat there for a long moment. Because what do you say to that? How do you explain to someone that you had spent 3 months of your life making their family member's celebration perfect, that you had called in every professional favor you had, that you had given your time and your money and your heart, and that now finding out you were not just uninvited from the party but erased from the entire celebration entirely? How do you make someone understand that kind of hurt? You can't. So I didn't try. I closed Instagram. I stared at my ceiling. And then my dad called. Engagement break. Hey, if this story is hitting close to home right now, I need you to pause for just 1 second and drop a comment below. Have you ever poured everything you had into something for someone you loved, only to find out they didn't value you at all? Tell me. I want to hear from you. And while you're down there, hit that subscribe button because this story is far from over and you do not want to miss what happens next. My dad, Robert Collins, is not a man who calls just to check in. When his name shows up on my screen, something is always expected of me. I answered out of habit. "Maya, we need to talk about the engagement gift," he said. The engagement gift. I almost set the phone down right then and there. He explained, in his calm and measured way, as if this were the most reasonable thing in the world, that Daniel and Claire were expecting a significant financial contribution from the family toward their honeymoon. $3,000. From me specifically. A luxury honeymoon for the couple whose engagement party I had already funded with my own time and money. "Dad," I said, keeping my voice even, "I'm not paying for that. I've already done more than enough." He went quiet for a second and then his voice hardened in that way it does when he's decided he's being patient with someone who should know better. "Gina, this is family. You can't opt out." Something in me went very still. I'd been called Gina my whole life by my family, a nickname that used to feel like warmth and now just felt like a costume I was tired of wearing. "You're being difficult," he said. "Just do your part." After I hung up I sat with that phrase for a long time. Do your part. As if my part wasn't already bleeding out across 3 months of spreadsheets and late nights and vendor calls and a rooftop venue I had personally negotiated for a party I was no longer welcome to attend. They wanted my labor. They wanted my money. They just didn't want me. I opened my laptop and stared at the vendor contracts sitting in my documents folder. Carlos Rivera, the venue manager, who I had spoken to almost every day for 2 months. Renee Thomas, who had trusted me to guide her team through the perfect Southern menu. Marcus Webb, who had designed everything around my vision, my direction, my taste. My name was on every single one of those agreements. And then something Tracy said to me once came floating back. Tracy Fisher, my best friend, sharp and loyal and someone who has never once in 10 years of friendship told me what I wanted to hear instead of what I needed to hear. I picked up my phone and called her. We met the next morning at a coffee shop near Beale Street, the kind of place that smells like roasted beans and possibility, and I unloaded everything onto that little wooden table between us. She listened without interrupting. She just let me talk, the whole ugly mess of it, until I ran out of words. Then she looked at me and said, "Maya, why are you still managing their party?" I didn't have an answer. "You signed those contracts," she said. "You have the power here. You don't owe them a single thing." And something cracked open in me when she said that. Not in a breaking way. More like a window opening. I wasn't just the person who did the work. I was the person holding the whole thing together. And I could choose to let go. I went home that night after coffee with Tracy and I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Just me and the quiet and the stack of vendor contracts and the soft sound of Memphis traffic outside my window. I thought about calling Daniel and giving him one last chance to make it right. I thought about calling my mom back and trying again to make her understand. I even thought about just showing up to the party anyway, uninvited, standing in the room I had decorated and eating the food I had ordered and daring any of them to say something. But none of those things felt right. Because all of them still had me bending. All of them still had me reaching toward people who had already turned away. Tracy's voice kept replaying in my head. "You have the power." I opened my email. I drafted 3 messages, one to Carlos Rivera at the venue, one to Renee Thomas at the catering company, and one to Marcus Webb for decor. I kept each one professional, clear, and brief. I explained that due to personal circumstances, I would no longer be managing this event and that the primary contact going forward would be my brother Daniel Collins. I sat with my cursor hovering over the send button for maybe 30 seconds. Then I clicked it. Carlos replied within the hour. "Maya, you're the one holding all of this together. Are you sure about this?" He was worried, I could tell. He had worked with me long enough to know that without a point person, things would unravel fast. Renee called. Her voice was careful and kind. She said, "Honey, your brother does not know these vendors the way you do. This is going to fall apart." And I said, "I know, Renee. I'm sorry. But I'm done." And she said, "I understand, baby. You take care of yourself." Marcus sent a text. Just 2 words. "You okay?" I didn't reply to that one. Because I wasn't sure yet. But I was getting there. Engagement break. You know what? Pause right here for a second because I need to know, are you the kind of person who would have sent those emails? Or would you have kept going, kept showing up, kept trying to fix things for people who weren't trying to fix things for you? Tell me in the comments. There's no wrong answer, I just want to know. And if this story is speaking to something you've been carrying, share it below. We're building something real down there in the comments section and I want you to be part of it. That night, I opened a travel site on my laptop and I typed in one word. Hawaii. I had been thinking about it since that first text from Daniel, just a flicker of an idea, like maybe I don't have to be here for this. And now it wasn't a flicker anymore. It was a full burning decision. I found a flight leaving Memphis the morning of the party. Landing in Honolulu by afternoon. I looked at the price. I looked at my bank account. I thought about the $3,000 my father had expected me to hand over for a honeymoon I wasn't invited to celebrate. And I booked it. The confirmation email hit my inbox and I made a sound I hadn't made in months. I laughed. Not a polite laugh or a nervous laugh. A real one, from somewhere low in my belly, the kind that surprises you. I called Tracy. "I'm going to Hawaii," I said. She screamed. Actual screaming. I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "Good for you," she yelled. "Let them figure out their own party, Maya. You deserve this." I hung up and I sat on my couch and for the first time in 3 months I felt like I could breathe. My family still hadn't apologized. My brother hadn't called back. My mother hadn't pushed past one gentle voicemail. My dad had gone quiet after our last conversation, probably expecting me to eventually come around the way I always had before. But I was already packing. The morning of the party I sat in Memphis International Airport with a carry-on at my feet and a coffee in my hands and my boarding pass on my phone, and I felt something I had not expected to feel. Peace. Not the numb kind. Not the kind that's really just exhaustion wearing a calm mask. Real peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop fighting for a seat at a table that never really wanted you there. My phone was quiet. No apologies. No last-minute messages from Daniel saying, "Wait, I was wrong, please come back." Nothing from my mom beyond that one voicemail I hadn't opened. Nothing from my dad. The silence from them told me everything I needed to know about the silence that had always been there, underneath all the noise of family obligation, underneath all the "yes, of course I'll help" and the "I'll stay up late" and the "here let me pay for that." Under all of it, this had always been the truth. That my love for them was bigger than their love for me. And I had finally stopped pretending otherwise. Meanwhile, back in Memphis, the rooftop was unraveling. Carlos Rivera called Daniel early that morning, and from what I heard later, his voice was wound tight as a spring. Without my oversight, the setup was chaos. Half the tables had no centerpieces. The floral arches Marcus had been planning for weeks were nowhere to be found, replaced at the last minute with dollar store balloons in colors that clashed with everything. The fairy lights in mason jars, my idea, were still in boxes because no one knew where they were supposed to go. Guests started arriving. The staff was scrambling. No one knew who was in charge because the person who had been in charge had just boarded a plane to Honolulu. Carlos texted me. "Your brother is completely lost." I didn't respond. Renee Thomas was facing her own disaster. The southern menu I had spent weeks perfecting, the barbecue sliders, the buttermilk cornbread, the peach cobbler that Renee made from her grandmother's recipe, none of it arrived correctly. The wrong order came. Cold sandwiches. No hot entrees. A complete mix-up with the vegetarian options that had guests standing at the buffet table looking confused and disappointed. Someone posted on social media before the party was even an hour old. A guest I didn't know wrote, "Spent good money on an engagement gift for a party with cold sandwiches and no decorations. What happened to this couple?" Marcus texted me too. "Arches never got put up. I don't have anyone directing me. I'm so sorry, Maya. I was somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico by then." I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, "Maya, didn't you feel guilty? Didn't you feel responsible?" And I want to be honest with you because I felt a pang. Of course I did. I am a human being and these were people I had loved my whole life. But here is the thing I want you to sit with. I had given them every warning. I had given them every opportunity. I had given them 3 months of my life and countless hours of my expertise and my own money. They knew I was the one holding it together, and they chose to push me out anyway. So drop a comment and tell me, was I wrong to leave? I really want to know what you think. And make sure you're subscribed because part 5 is where everything changes. Back in Memphis, the argument between Daniel and Claire started somewhere around the cocktail hour. I heard about it later, in pieces, from Tracy, who heard it from someone who was there. It started quietly, the way those things always do, a sharp word here, a tense look there, both of them trying to keep it together for the guests while the whole event was slipping through their fingers. And then it stopped being quiet. Claire's voice carried across the rooftop. "This is your fault. You said you could handle this." Daniel shot back. "You're the one who pushed Maya out. This is on you." Back and forth. Right there in front of everyone. People who had flown in for this celebration standing with warm champagne and cold sandwiches watching the happy couple fall apart at the seams. My phone started buzzing as I drank a small cup of bad airplane coffee somewhere above the Pacific. "Mom, Maya, the party is a disaster. Please call me." "Dad, where are you? We need you to fix this." Daniel, a series of messages. "Gina, the vendors are freaking out. Gina, please. Gina, I need your help." I looked at each message. I read every word. Then I turned my phone face down on the tray table, leaned my seat back 2 inches, and closed my eyes. I wasn't their safety net anymore. And in part 5, I want to tell you about Hawaii. About what the ocean did for my soul. About Tracy's article. And about the moment I realized that walking away from people who don't value you is not giving up. It is the bravest thing you can do. Honolulu welcomed me like the universe had planned it. The moment I stepped outside the airport, the warm air wrapped around me like something I had needed for a very long time and hadn't known how to ask for. There were flowers in the air. Actual flowers. And the sound of something moving slowly and unhurried in a way that Memphis had not felt in months. I checked into a small hotel steps from Waikiki Beach. My room looked out over water so blue it almost didn't look real. I set my bag down and I stood at the window and I cried. Not because I was sad. Well, maybe a little sad. But more because the relief of being somewhere no one needed anything from me was so overwhelming that my body didn't know what else to do with it. I walked the beach that first evening, barefoot, the sand still warm from the day. Tourists everywhere, laughing, snapping photos, letting the waves chase them up the shore. And I just walked through all of it, quietly, putting distance between myself and everything that had happened. The next morning I found a meditation class at a small Buddhist temple tucked in a valley not far from the coast. The instructor, a woman named Leilani, had this way of speaking that made you feel like she had been waiting for you specifically. Focus on your truth, she said. Let what is not yours fall away. I sat cross-legged on a mat with my eyes closed and I thought about Daniel. About my mom. About my dad standing in his quiet kitchen expecting me to do my part. About Vanessa and her Instagram story and the words "didn't think you'd care." And slowly, breath by breath, I let myself stop being angry at all of them. Not because they deserved forgiveness yet. But because the anger was mine to carry and I was tired. I started journaling. Every day. Pages and pages of things I had never let myself say out loud. How long I had been bending. How far I had shrunk myself to fit into spaces that were never really made for me. How much I had confused love with service, and how those two things are not the same. I went snorkeling. I ate shave ice and poke bowls from a food truck near the beach. I did sunset yoga with strangers who would never know my brother's name or what he had done, and somehow that anonymity felt like the most generous gift anyone had given me in years. Engagement break. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. On my 3rd day, Tracy sent me a link. Check this out, she wrote. It was an article. Published on a major lifestyle platform. The headline read, "Event planner excluded from her own brother's party chooses Hawaii instead," and we're all inspired. Tracy, my best friend and a freelance journalist, had written the whole thing. She had interviewed me before I left Memphis and woven my story into something that breathed. She didn't use my real name or Daniel's. But the truth of it was unmistakable. The months of work. The exclusion. The text. The flight. All of it. I read the comments for almost an hour. "You are not alone," said one. "I did this for my sister's wedding and she didn't even thank me." "I needed this story today," said another. "You're not just an event planner," someone wrote. "You're an artist. And they treated you like a tool." I sat on my hotel balcony above that impossible blue water and I cried again. The good kind this time. The kind that empties you out and leaves room for something new. My inbox started filling up with messages from strangers who had read Tracy's article. Other event planners who had been undervalued. People who had walked away from family obligations that were slowly eating them alive. A woman named Dara who said she had been the Maya of her family for 15 years and reading my story made her finally book the therapy appointment she had been putting off. I texted Tracy at midnight Hawaii time. "You changed something," I wrote. She replied immediately even though it was 2 a.m. in Memphis. "No, Maya. You changed it. I just wrote it down." I came home 2 weeks later. My apartment was quiet and exactly as I had left it, and somehow it felt different. Like it was mine in a way it hadn't quite been before. Tracy called that evening with news she couldn't keep to herself. She had heard through mutual friends that Daniel and Claire had called off their engagement. The party had been the breaking point. The public argument. The social media complaints. The guests who had left early. It had cracked something between them that they couldn't seem to repair. Claire blamed Daniel for losing control of the event. Daniel blamed Claire for pushing me out in the first place. And somewhere in all that blame there wasn't enough love left to hold things together. I listened to all of this very quietly. I didn't feel happy about it. I want to be clear about that because feeling joy at someone else's pain, even someone who hurt you, is not something I would wish for. But I didn't feel guilty either. I had not done anything to them. I had simply stopped doing everything for them. And they had been so dependent on my invisible labor that without it the whole beautiful illusion fell apart. My mom left voicemails. Softer now. Less about what I owed and more about how she missed me. My dad texted, a little awkwardly, suggesting we talk. Vanessa left a message that started with "You know I was never trying to hurt you" and trailed off into something vague and unconvincing. I deleted all of them. Not in rage. In resolution. I blocked their numbers one by one, sitting cross-legged on my couch in the quiet of my Memphis apartment, and with each tap of that screen I felt something lift off me that I had been carrying so long I had forgotten it was weight. And then the work started coming. Tracy's article had moved through the event planning world the way good stories do, quietly at first and then everywhere at once. A music festival organizer in Memphis reached out wanting me to coordinate their spring event. A couple planning their wedding contacted me inspired, they said, by the way I had stood up for myself. A corporate client hosting a downtown gala asked for a consultation, and I met them at a sleek office near the river and pitched ideas that were all mine, no compromises, no shrinking, just my full vision offered with full confidence. They signed on the spot. My biggest contract yet. I sat in my car afterward in the parking garage and I put both hands on the steering wheel and I said out loud to nobody, "There you are. There is the version of you that was always here waiting." Looking back now, I see it so clearly. I had confused love with sacrifice for so long that I thought they were the same thing. I thought being a good sister meant saying yes every time. Being a good daughter meant absorbing the disappointment quietly. Being a good cousin meant not making a fuss when you're erased from someone's story. But love that costs you your self-worth is not love. It is a transaction you never agreed to. Choosing Hawaii was not running away. It was the first time I had run toward something. Toward myself. Toward the life that had been waiting patiently on the other side of all that giving. Your worth is not measured in how much you can carry for other people. It never was. And I promise you, on the other side of letting go, something is waiting. For me it was a beach in Hawaii and a room full of strangers who saw my value before my own family did. For you it might be something completely different. But it is there. Go find it.